Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Hello. How are you today? Is everything fine for you? What's the weather like for you? What are you doing? So, hi. How are you? Is everything all right? Well, today we're going to talk about the history of the English language and the most interesting things that cover Beowulf, that cover Chaucer, Shakespeare, and LOL. And how are they all connected? Like, what are we doing there? And wow, how? All of the history in one stream. Yeah, that's just one stream and the whole history of the whole English language. So yay, let's have a look at what we have here. But first, let's have a look at who am I. So my name is Daria. I am a teacher at Учёба.ру. I graduated from Sochi State University. I passed my CE and TKT exams. I studied both in Russia and in the UK. And you can probably say that I'm a coffee addict. This is my trustworthy coffee supply. So if you see me in person, you can probably say that I'm a coffee addict. And also, I'm a keen nature photographer. But enough about me. I'm not alone here today. I'm with online school Учёба.ру. And we have got 12,000 graduate guys. 12,000. Those are people who passed ЕГЭ and ОГЭ with us. And 4,200 of our students got 80 plus for their ЕГЭ and A5 for their ОГЭ. And I'm very, very happy to work with some amazing teachers who are also a part of the team of teachers at Учёба.ру. So join us. We will be very glad to see you. And what do we promise you? First off, that's a guaranteed entrance to university. If you prepare with us for three exams, guys, don't miss classes. That's crucial, I would say. And do your homework, then we can pretty much guarantee your entrance to the university. Progress check. Every month, you're going to write a mock exam. And when I say a mock exam, I mean it. So it's just like the real one, but you have your time to track your progress. You have the ability to see what's going on. How are you? Is everything all right, basically, or not? And we have got different level groups, so you can study at your own pace. So yeah, that's quite everything. And I promised you that today we're going to talk about English. We are going to talk about the history of the English language, and I would like to pay some special attention to some of the whys. Why are we talking about that? First off, appreciation of the language evolution. Knowing the history of English helps us appreciate how dynamic and flexible this language is. For instance, Old English sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, like Wingardium Leviosa. It's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa, like Hermione says, something like that. But modern English is just modern English. I'm using it right now, and I pretty much think that you can understand me. Another wise is better understanding of literature. So if you've ever tried reading Shakespeare, not like the adapted contemporary version, but like the original version, you probably found yourself asking, what language is this? What am I looking at? Well, a dive into the history of the English language can help. Absolutely. Plus, you can impress your friends with thy excellent Shakespeare banter. So yeah, that's another reason why we should know about the history of the language we are studying. Improving vocabulary and etymology. That's like another reason, because vocabulary and etymology, they are all about the roots of the English language. They are about the roots of the words. So you can enrich your vocabulary, you can make it a bit bigger, you can make it a bit larger. Next one is enhanced language skills. So, learning about historical forms of English can improve your understanding of grammar and syntax. I know that this is like a super specific thing I need to talk about, but still, if you know like why this happens, probably you can say that, oh, I know that. Oh, I can deal with that. Another thing is cultural understanding. So English carries a rich, and by rich I mean like very rich cultural history. And knowing this history can deepen your understanding of English speaking countries. And you know, there are a lot of English speaking countries in the world. So next time someone uses LOL in a conversation, you might just appreciate is as the next step of the language development rather than the sign of the apocalypse. So that's about understanding language change, and basically that wraps up some of the whys I wanted to cover in this stream. So I hope that learning about the history of the English language is interesting. I hope that it can be quite amazing to know some of the stories and words I'm about to tell you. Okay, so here we have a meme basically when the Old English meets modern English. And let's imagine that this person is Old English. Let's call him KV. And let's call this person, I don't know, Trendy or something else. So do you think they will understand each other? I don't know, maybe. Well, but I think that with all of the transformations, with all of the changes that happened to the English language, they probably will not understand each other, and it will be quite a rocky communication. So yeah, pun intended, by the way, in terms of rocky and like rock people and so on. Okay, so Old English. That's what it all started with, right? When was that Old English? So it happened approximately 450 AD till 1150 AD. So that's the time frame we're working with. That's about the Old English language. I'm going to cover some aspects here so you can be a bit more familiar with it and maybe understand some quite peculiar facts. So, Old English was less how do you do and more who earth thou, which sounds like, I don't know, for me it sounds like a spell from some witchcraft and wizardry school of magic or something like this. So, Old English, also known as Anglo-Saxon, originated from a mix of dialects spoken by Germanic tribes, Angles, Saxons, Jutes, who settled in English. In England, sorry, who settled in England. It was like a bit of a European Union back then, but with more axes and swords and so on. So that's the origin. We've got the mix of different tribes who all spoke some of the variations of languages. Old English origin we already covered, but we also have the Viking influence. Then came the Vikings. They not just raiding but also adding some cool Norse words to the vocabulary of the English language. For example, words like sky and window and skirt. Literally, the window is from the Norse windauga, which is a wind eye. So basically, each time you look at the window, you can see that this is a word of the Norse origin. Hey. Okay, next one is pronunciation of k and g. In old language, like, can you give me any examples of the words where we now don't pronounce them, but apparently in the old language, in the old English times, we used to pronounce them? For example, I bet you all know this word. So how would you say that? I would say that a night, so night. And each time my student says k night, I'm like, no, it's not k, we don't pronounce k, it's just n. So this is when Old English comes into our reality, if we can say so. And if you were a student in the Old English times, you would be absolutely correct to pronounce this letter k here, and it would be knicht. So each time you're making a mistake and pronouncing the modern word night, something like knicht or something else, just let's imagine that you're not making a mistake but pronouncing an Old English version of it. So another word is this one. So as usual, we don't pronounce G now, but in the old language, in the Old English times, once again 450, 1150 AD, it used to be pronounced. Another very, very interesting thing here is this one. So how do you think this letter is pronounced? You can say that this is a thorn. The name of the letter is thorn. And actually, it represented a th and a th sounds. So, do you know where we now use th and the? In words like think, and the, for example, right? And if we have these sounds here in the old language, in the Old English version of the English language, we would probably just use this one. So, if this is the, how would you say this word? What do you think this word would be? Can you guess? Can you comment in the chat? So, what do you think is that? This is th or the, and this is basically. So this is how they would spell the back then, right? A very interesting one. I don't know if I can write it that way. It's like PE, like physical education. At least what it looks like to me. But apparently, a speaker of an Old English language would pronounce it as the, if the speaker, of course, knew how to read. But yeah, this is the, guys. Here it is. Okay, also another thing which is quite important is about 4 main dialects. And 4 main dialects are important because we had like some variations, let's say. We had back then Mercian, Northumbrian, Kentish, and West Saxon. So it's like 4 different versions in a country that is smaller than most of the US states. So UK is a very small country in comparison to Russia, for example, or in comparison to the US, or even in comparison to Australia. But can you imagine 4 different variants of the language in one country, which is quite small? And also, I think it would be very, very hard to ask for some directions. Like, one person says, go left, and you don't understand what this person says. So yeah. Another one, very, very important one, is Beowulf. Beowulf is the epic poem or like Anglo-Saxon blockbuster. It's like the Avengers of its time, but with more made and less special effects. So, Beowulf was probably the first hero to fight monsters, and he didn't need a sequel. So yeah, it was epic. But the thing is, you can right now see like several words and several lines from Beowulf. The thing is, if you hear it, I don't think you will understand it, because this is Old English we are talking about, guys. And I hope that my technical knowledge will let me do the trick, and you will be able to listen to some part of Beowulf as it used to be pronounced back in the day. So let's try and listen. Okay, well, I hope that you heard it. Because I did. I don't know if you heard it. Write me in the comments, by the way, if you heard it. I hope you did. And to me, it didn't sound like the modern English we're talking right now. And it didn't sound as a language that we are using today. So for me, it's just literally something that I don't understand, despite having like heard it several times while I was preparing for this stream. Like, nope. This is not something that I understand. And this is how different our modern English is from Old English. Okay. Another thing which is very, very important that we don't have right now, but Old English used to have. That's cases, guys. Cases. Old English used to have cases. Thanks God we don't have to. We don't have them right now. Nouns, pronouns, adjectives, all of them were changing their forms. It's like the words were playing the dress up, or you thought that Russian is tricky. No, Old English was absolutely the same. And it was like a solving grammatical puzzle each time you were trying to make a sentence. Like, is this case? Is that case? Like, what's wrong? Like, how do I do that? How do I decline all of that? Okay. And end of era, of English, Old English era. Basically, that is 1066, guys. Do you know what's 1066 and why is it so important? Do you know? Maybe you do. If you do know, please leave your comments down below. But, okay, I will just tell you. That's a Norman conquest. Old English starts turning into Middle English. This is like the transitional period. And basically, because that's a Norman conquest, English got a little bit of a French makeover, a little bit more fancy, right? It was like vintage. So in 1066, English wasn't just old, it was vintage. I like the word vintage, by the way. So now it has some of the French words there, some of the French words, some of the French influence. So yeah, basically 1066 is the key year, or the year of the Norman conquest. And this is when the transition starts. Next one, we transition into Middle English, which is approximately from 1150 AD to 1500s. What's going on there and what do I have here? Probably you see that there are still not very nice ratings, or maybe they're quite difficult to understand, but still. I have got some diagrams here. I'm going to talk about them in details. And let's start. We just finished with the Norman conquest influence. So what we have here? Basically, the vocabulary was heavily influenced by French. So English just borrowed it. We can say that it's like Norman conquest's lingual twist. So basically, they just like decided that everything must be in French because they just didn't speak English back then. So, however, English stayed very, very strong among the common folk. So it's like he was quite stubborn, if we can say. But right now, because of that, we have a very interesting mix of words. So they liked doing a lot of things and doing a lot of stuff. Okay, and we are moving on to Chaucer and his contribution. Who is Chaucer and why his contribution is so important? Geoffrey Chaucer wrote a very interesting book, we can say. He was like a literally rock star of Middle English. He was Shakespeare before Shakespeare himself. And he wrote something which is called Canterbury Tales. It's like a medieval Game of Thrones minus the dragons. And it was written in Middle English. So it was a bit more accessible to the masses. And it was like a Chaucer's version of going viral. So if he had social media back then, his Canterbury Tales would be filled with medieval selfies. Like, imagine you with a sword on a horse, riding a horse. And hashtag something like pilgrim problems, because it's all about the pilgrimage to Canterbury. That's why it's called Canterbury Tales. The next thingy that we really need to talk about, that the language of the common people was still English. I told you that French was more of a high court situation, like the king spoke it, his court spoke it, but the common folk still use English quite a lot. And yeah, language of the common people was still English. That transitional English starting from Beowulf and so on. We also had introduction of some new vocabulary and words like cane and queen and love and act and color. All of them were added at approximately at that time. And because we had that split between like the court and the king and the queen, basically aristocracy, and like the common people, it's really, really interesting what we have right now. We all know the animal which is called cow, right? A cow. The cow says moo, right? But once we decide to eat the cow, we've got beef. The word beef comes from French bœuf. And it's like, commoners raise a cow, but when the nobles add beef, that's like a class-based menu, guys. So something like that. It's like branded makeover, for being eaten. It's a bit a dark joke, but yeah, still something like that. Also, besides having this difference in words and vocabulary, we also had something like the great vowel shift. What's that? What is that, guys? What do you think is that? That's a mysterious time when all the long vowels in the English language decided to play musical chairs. They shifted, and that is why English pronunciation is such a puzzle today. So we have got a very interesting diagram right here, if you can see it. And what we have, E and U drop and become A and U. That's like step 1. Step 2, E and O move up, become E and U. So like they drop. We've got like bout, bye, and so on. And everything basically moves up. Everything. So this is what we have now. Like I would pronounce this word as a boat, boot, and bout. Bait, beat, bead, bite. So I am familiar with the modern pronunciation, but apparently before this great vowel shift, these words would be read absolutely different. So I hope it makes sense, but that was just like a first part of the transition. It continues to the later times, but we're going to talk about that a bit later. The Black Death's impact. So the Black Death is a devastating pandemic. It was in 1347, 1351, like several waves of this pandemic they survived. It has a very strong effect on the English language. The population decreased. The relative status of English increased because the lower class, primarily English speakers, became more important economically. So that's what happens. And of course, first English printing press. William Caxton set up his first printing press in England in 1476. So what do you think this also led to? Well, if you have a printing press, you can now print something like that, and you don't have to basically write it with your own hands, right? You just have this, have this steel thingy, you put the ink on it and press it. So it makes the whole process easier, right? Right. But still, Middle English is still not the same language that we have here. I have got a part of Canterbury Tales right here, and I hope that you can hear it, will be able to hear it as well. So let's listen to it, and you will tell me if you can understand. Some of the words are okay, but some of the words are like, what do you mean? So let's listen to it and decide whether you can understand it or not.
When that April, with his showres sorter, the drocht of March hath persed to the roter, and bathed every vine in switch liqueur, of which vertue engendred is the flour. When Zephyrus, eke with his sweeter breath, inspired hath in every holt and heath the tendre croppes. And the younge sonne hath in the ram his halve course runne. And smalle fooles maken melodie, that slepen al de nicht with open eie. So pricketh hem natuur in hier courages. Then lungen volk to goon on pilgrimages, and palmers for to seken stranger strondes to ferne halwes, couth in sundre londes. And specially from every sheeres ender of England to Canterbury thy wende, The holy, blissful martyr for to seca, that him hath holpen one that thy was seca.
Okay, I hope you heard that. Some of the words, as I said, like Canterbury or something like that, like the modern Canterbury, they can be understood, but others are like complete gibberish. But still, that's Middle English, and Middle English is like a turning point. It's like a linguistic melting pot, simmering with French, haute cuisine, and English too. So like the mix of two. It set the stage for modern English we know and love, and sometimes we love to hate it because of all of that spelling and pronunciation making absolutely zero sense. But now we know why it makes zero sense, because of the Great Vowel Shift, for example. Right? Okay, and we are moving on to the next one, which is, what do you think is that? And that is early modern English. That's 1500s approximately to 1700s. And I have got here a picture of Shakespeare, who doesn't know how to write his own name because standardization of England yet to happen. And we've got here the first English dictionary. So yeah, let's have a look at that. Basically, we still have got the Great Vowel Shift. It's like it's still in progress. And during this time, we have got a person who you all know very well, I guess. His name is William Shakespeare. And he was a true wizard of the English language. He was like a rock star of an early modern English. He wasn't just a playwright. He was a wordsmith. He literally invented word. And can you guys believe he invented some 1,700 words? You've got bedazzled there. You've got eyeball. You've got fashionable. You've got lonely. All of those words were invented by him. So if Shakespeare were alive today, he might say to lol or not to lol. That is the question. And because the spelling was not yet consistent, it would be something to be or not to be, something like this, to be or not to. Let's imagine that this is to be, something like this. So or it could be to be like this, or not to be. Let's find out how this happens and so on. So standardization of the English language. We know that William Caxton introduced the printing press, and that is why it led to standardization of spelling, right? Texts were made a bit more uniform across England. Another thing that impacted early modern English was the King James Bible. It was published in 1611, and it had a significant impact on the English language and literature, with many phrases from it still commonly used today, like as their wits end and a leopard cannot change its spots. So yeah, absolutely, like this. And also, because of the printing press, because of the printed Bibles and so on, it all led to increasing literacy rates, right? This period saw an increase in literacy rates, well, partly due to Reformation, partly due to something else. And at the same time, we have got the first English dictionaries. The first English dictionary was this one. Can you guess the name, like from this picture? Can you maybe comment it down below? It would be really nice. So it's called a table alphabetical, and it was one of the earliest, with first edition published in 1604. Here I have the picture, I don't know if you can see it, of 1630 edition, 13th edition, but 1604 is supposed to be like the first one. And as for the variations in spelling, yeah, even Shakespeare himself is known to have spelled his name in several different ways, as you can probably see in my picture, like William, Shilliam, something like this, Shakespeare, and so on. This is, of course, a humor, but yeah, he was not consistent in spelling his name. Imagine you not knowing how to write your name. That would be strange, at least for me. And of course, first English colonies. The establishment of colonies in North America during the early 1600s began the spread of English as a global language. So as you can see, those 200 years were very, very important for the English language and for its development. We still have got like the end of Great Vowel Shift. We've got Shakespeare and his genius who invented words like this. So next time you're inventing a word, think of yourself as you're a Shakespeare. We've got standardization of English, we've got Bibles printing, we've got literacy rates increasing, we've got spellings which were still varied, but a bit less varied. We've got dictionaries and colonies, which led to a global language, to English being a global language. So Shakespeare and the printing press, they were like the dynamic duo of early modern English. They transformed it from a patchwork, like different patches of regional dialects into a more standardized one and expressive language. And at that time, English started to sound a bit less like Chaucer, and you heard that. Still some words known, most of them are unknown, right? And started sounding more like, well, Shakespeare. And this all led to the next one, which is basically late modern English, 1800s up until present. And here we have got a bunch of things happening. We've got the Industrial Revolution, linguistic steamroller. We've got the global expansion of the English language. We've got American influence. We've got the influence of science and technology. We've got internet and technology slang. And we've got, finally, English as a global lingua franca. So let's have a look at what's going on in each of these points. With the Industrial Revolution came a surge of new words. Terms like train, engine, factory, they entered some everyday vocabulary, making it the first time people could be on the wrong side of the tracks. Let's imagine that you explain to a Victorian person who lived during the reign of Queen Victoria that tweeting in the future doesn't involve birds, but it involves basically Elon Musk and 280 characters or less to share your thoughts with the word, right? The next thing is global expansion. You know that they started colonization in 1600s, and now the British Empire spread immensely during the 19th century. And all that led to English being one of the most widespread languages. English, if English were a person, maybe he would be that friend that comes back with an accent from 1 week of vacation. We're sounding like this in the Russian language, so something like that would be really, really interesting, maybe. Okay, next we have the American influence. Independence of the United States, 1700s. And its subsequent global influence led to development and to the spread of the American English with its unique vocabulary, spelling, grammatical forms, and so on. And now we have got basically two forms of the English language, British one and American one. For example, a lot of words which use S as a letter in the British version are spelled with Z in the American one. Or, for example, you can say that there is a lift near my flat in Britain, but it would be an elevator and an apartment in the US. And you can say autumn in Great Britain, but you can also say fall in the US. So yeah, some different sets of words, some different sets of spelling, so something like that. Influence of science and technology is immense during this time, as you can probably see. We've got the internet, computer, genetics, quantum. We've got a lot of words which we use right now, which people didn't used to use in the past, because this phenomenon, these things were not invented yet. So yeah. And now we have like a lot of slang words, as you know. We have got something like LOL, we have got something like WDYM, like what do you mean, and so on, like see you later, C, then Y, then L, and then 8. So something like that. So it's a lot to know and it's a lot to learn, but still that's quite an interesting thing. We've got BRB, we've got a lot of emojis, which are probably like the language itself. So yeah. And English is a global lingua franca. I don't think that this requires any like further explanation, because, well, in any part of the world, if you speak English, you will, like 90% will be understood, right? So yeah, something like that. Late modern English, it's like a linguistic time capsule. It captures the essence of each era. From steam engines to digital cloud to language constantly evolves, it adapts, and it surprises. So next time you Google something, remember, you're a part of an ongoing story of the English language. So basically that's all I wanted to tell you about, but I still have got some information to give you. And this information is about our school, and I will start speaking Russian here. So, what we have here, что у нас здесь есть и что мы вам предлагаем, это подготовка к ЕГЭ по английскому языку у нас в онлайн-школе Учёба.ру. 9 месяцев у вас было в запасе, если бы вы начинали с сентября, но сейчас уже январь, поэтому у вас немножечко меньше месяцев. У вас занятия 2 раза в неделю, у вас домашнее задание после каждого занятия, у вас пробный ЕГЭ ежемесячно, разговорный клуб и подробная проверка сложных задач с развернутой обратной связью и рекомендациями. Что же это значит? Это значит, что у вас есть еще достаточно времени, чтобы подготовиться к ЕГЭ по английскому языку. После каждого интерактивного урока, я о них скажу чуть-чуть попозже, вас ждет не менее интерактивное домашнее задание. Вас ждет пробный ЕГЭ ежемесячно. Это значит, что каждый месяц вы можете писать экзамен, следить за своим прогрессом. Вы можете следить, ваши родители могут следить и так далее. И после каждого экзамена, после такого каждого пробного экзамена, вам предоставляется подробнейшая обратная связь и рекомендации от экспертов ЕГЭ. Вам говорят, что хорошо, что плохо, на что нужно обратить внимание, что можно еще чуть-чуть поработать, над чем можно, что можно улучшить и так далее. Вам говорят, что вот так вот мы не говорим в английском, мы говорим вот так и так далее. Вот это засчитают, вот это не засчитают, тут вы получите столько-то баллов, тут вы получите столько-то баллов, потому что. Плюс каждый вторник у нас с вами есть разговорный клуб, потому что как мы будем учить язык, если мы не говорим на нем, правильно? Это просто невозможно. Так вот, разговорный клуб — это такое собрание, такой семинар, такой урок, как хотите, на котором мы говорим. Говорим мы на разные темы. Мы говорим на темы денег, мы говорим на тему культуры, мы говорим на тему литературы, мы говорим на тему истории, на тему здорового питания, на тему фитнеса, на тему бизнеса. you name it, как говорится. То есть мы говорим на все злободневные темы, которые нас волнуют. Что из плюсов вы получаете в разговорном клубе? Во-первых, общение. Во-вторых, вы получаете тот набор слов, который необходим для этого общения, потому что каждая тема идет со своим каким-то набором лексическим и вокабуляром. И вы получаете, собственно говоря, 1,5 часа общения на английском языке, что я считаю замечательно. Не знаю какой, но я считаю, что это превосходно. Следующее, что лично мне очень-очень-очень сильно нравится, и это интерактивная платформа для подготовки. Все, что нужно для обучения в одном месте в удобном формате. Абсолютно все. У вас есть телефон? Шикарно. У вас есть компьютер? Превосходно. У вас есть лэптоп? Замечательно. У вас есть планшет? Еще лучше. Все это поможет вам быть на связи с нашей интерактивной платформой для подготовки. Все, что нужно для обучения, оно все есть в одном месте и в удобном формате. Все абсолютно. Что еще есть? Это удобное расписание и список дел. Вам сразу понятно, что нужно делать, когда нужно делать, на какой неделе нужно делать и так далее. Ну, например, вот у нас тут идет текущая неделя, понедельник, у вас по литературе урок по вот такой вот теме, по химии у вас домашка по вот такой теме, и по математике у вас тоже урок по вот такой вот теме. Это что? Это все значит, что вы здесь выполняете домашнее задание, тут у вас интерактивные уроки, и тут у вас тоже интерактивные уроки. Все ваши семинары, все ваши домашки, все ваши пробники вы видите у себя в расписании. Очень удобная штука. Сами уроки, я уже про них несколько раз говорила. Что же это такое? Это понятная теория с конспектами и также упражнения для закрепления. Как вы видите, тут у вас есть такая штучка, называется «Смотреть урок». Наши преподаватели, наши методисты записывают для вас замечательнейшие, подробнейшие уроки со всей теорией, со всеми необходимыми материалами, которые вам нужны для того, чтобы сдать ваш экзамен. И после каждого такого видео, микротемки, вы просто сможете посмотреть, как же вы поняли эту тему и поняли ли вы ее. Если не поняли, всегда можно пересмотреть, и у вас всегда есть конспект. Как вы понимаете, понятна вам тема или непонятно? У вас есть задание. После каждого видео идет набор заданий, специально направленное на это видео. Так что упражнения для закрепления, видео, конспекты, все это есть у нас на платформе. Домашки. Домашки у вас тоже идут после каждого урока. И домашки у вас есть с быстрой проверкой, то есть вы сразу понимаете, правильно, неправильно, и почему правильно, почему неправильно. Например, у нас тут написано, какая из этих наук изучает грибы. Я, честно, не биолог, но так как мне тут выделили зелененьким цветом микология, то я тоже согласна с ними, выбираю микологию. Грибами занимается вот эта наука от такого-то, такого-то, ботаника — это растения, у нас тут есть еще лишайники и есть еще и мхи. И нам сразу сказали, что это правильный вариант ответа, так что замечательно. Практические семинары. Вы посмотрели урок, сделали домашку, сделали конспект, вроде бы все, сделали все задания. Но у вас есть еще и живое общение по видео с преподавателями в семинарах. Семинары – это тоже супер важная вещь, где вы можете задать вопросы, где вы можете что-то обсудить, где вы можете потренироваться еще дополнительно, прямо уже на уроке с преподавателем. И, как я уже говорила, это ежемесячные пробники. Это полные варианты ЕГЭ, полные варианты ОГЭ для проверки ваших знаний. Тут у нас есть с вами задания, которые сразу проверяются автоматически. Есть те, которые проверяются экспертами. Вот тут у вас они написано «проверяем». Это значит, что задание сейчас на проверке у эксперта. Вот. Точно так же у нас есть удобные чаты с преподавателем. Мы быстренько отвечаем на все вопросы. Если вдруг у вас что-то техническое, не стесняйтесь, пишите. Если у вас какие-то неполадки не поняли вы тему, не стесняйтесь, пишите. Если у вас чего-то такое не получается, не стесняйтесь, пишите. Мы быстро отвечаем на все вопросы, мы помогаем со всем разобраться. У вас есть группа, и вы также можете писать лично вашим преподавателям. Что еще супер полезно? Это наша система уведомлений. Это своевременные напоминания, чтобы ничего не пропустить. Вам прямо в Telegram приходит оповещение, что у вас сейчас через 10 минут начинается вебинар по теме сочинения. Или же у вас во вторник через 10 минут начинается разговорный клуб по английскому языку. И плюс вам присылают список дел на сегодня, так называемый. Что вы прошли, что вы не прошли, что нужно сделать, какие домашки сделать, какие задания и так далее. Ну что я вам хочу сказать? Мы вас ждем на занятиях у нас в онлайн-школе Учёба.ру. Приходите. Подписывайтесь, ставьте лайки, алгоритмы это любят, комментируйте. Плюшки вам в карму, настроение мне. И I will see you next Sunday. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. And I will see you next week. Bye.